Morning coffee has a rhythm to it. You settle into the steam rising off the mug, maybe catch the call of a bird. Breathe in the peace you've earned by choosing this place. For Aaron Blake, that morning ritual by his private lake was sacred. It was meant to be the reward after scraping and saving through months of sacrifice. The quiet joy of looking across water that belonged entirely to him. But joy can curdle fast, and that day it happened before the first sip had even cooled. He had walked down to the dock expecting tranquility, only to freeze mid-step at the brilliant slap of yellow glaring against weathered wood. The stickers looked official, the kind of fluorescent authority that usually comes with state agencies. His eyes adjusted and he read the print, HOA Safety Inspection, approved. Beneath it sat a QR code and fine print about community standards. His hand tightened on the mug, the warmth turning bitter on his tongue. Community standards? Community property? He hadn't bought this land to share it. He'd bought it because every inch of shoreline, every pebble at the water's edge, every reed and willow branch had been confirmed by county deed as his. And yet here was plastic proof that someone had been on his dock declaring otherwise. Confusion turned quickly to suspicion. Kneeling, he peeled at the sticker, noticing the adhesive was still tacky. Fresh. Whoever had placed them hadn't just been here recently. They'd been bold enough to think no one would notice. Aaron pulled out his phone, scanned the QR code, and what loaded made his stomach lurch. There, on the HOA's website, was his lake. His own dock, in fact. Photographed without his knowledge. Displayed like a catalog entry advertising lake amenities. Fishing dock, kayak storage, seasonal swimming area. All packaged as if the neighborhood had bought them. Screenshots were captured in rapid succession, his fingers trembling only from outrage now. Even the calendar mocked him. Tournaments and family events scheduled for community enjoyment. The sound of light footsteps broke his focus. Footsteps too casual for someone approaching private property. From the path appeared the figure at the center of this absurd claim. Malene Pierce, HOA president, clipboard in hand like it was a sheriff's star. "You're not in the HOA," she said crisply, not bothering with pleasantries. "So the community amenities are ours to control." With a deliberate motion, she slapped another sticker onto a post, ink pen scratching across her notes with bureaucratic delight. Aaron steadied his phone, angling it to capture not only the stickers but Malene herself in the frame. This wasn't an argument anymore. This was documentation. Her mouth moved with official-sounding words about pre-season safety inspections. Yet none of it landed. Beautification, compliance, liability protection. All gloss. All irrelevant. The only thing real was her trespass. Her pen scrawling her version of power onto paper that wasn't hers to write on. He bagged one sticker carefully in a clear plastic sleeve, the zip echoing loud against the morning mist. His sarcasm escaped in a muttered line. That sticker just grew here all by itself. But humor was wasted. She only scribbled more notes, perhaps inventing categories like hostile owner or non-compliant resident. The legal deed weighed heavily in his mind, mental armor against her manufactured authority. This lake didn't belong to some voluntary association. It belonged to Aaron Blake in black and white at the county courthouse. From the porch, his partner Na appeared, coffee in hand, silently observing. The sight of her grounded him. They had chosen this house together, calling it their sanctuary. The idea of outsiders reframing it as a shared playground made his jaw clench tighter. Malene left eventually, clipboard hugged to her side, her gaze sharp with calculation. It wasn't the look of someone who'd been corrected. It was the look of someone plotting next moves. She vanished down the trail, leaving behind stickers on posts, adhesive on bark, plastic shrieking a false claim of ownership. The dock, instead of peaceful, now bore a warning. Evidence, yes, but evidence of what? Fraud, certainly. Trespass, absolutely. But in its garish yellow, the sticker spoke of something bigger. A systematized attempt to rewrite reality through paperwork, presentation, and persistence. Aaron tucked the bagged sticker into his pocket, the weight of thin plastic feeling heavier than it had a right to be. On their kitchen table, he would later spread out the screenshots, photos of markers, inspections, dates scrawled in the metadata. The struggle wasn't going to be a shouting match on his deck. It would be in official channels. Documents filed against documents. "I need to make some calls," he told Na, his voice flat, calm in the way rivers are calm before the flood. "Beginning with the county clerk's office. because if someone had put his lake under a column marked amenities, he would pull every record until the truth stood naked again. The morning had begun with mist and peace. It ended with bitter coffee, stickers bagged as evidence, and the sharp awareness that his private lake had just become a battlefield. The county clerk's website was supposed to reassure him, and in a way it did. The digital parcel record loaded quickly, showing the bold conclusion Aaron already knew. Owner, Aaron Blake. Private water body with 25-foot buffer. No easements. No shared usage agreements. As clean and undeniable as fresh snow. He leaned back in his chair, watching Na skim the screen over his shoulder. "There it is," she said softly but firmly. "It's ours." He nodded, but unease pressed on his chest. If the documents were so definitive, why had bright yellow stickers bloomed across his dock like invasive weeds? A lie doesn't need truth to thrive, Aaron realized. It only needs confidence, persistence, and paperwork that looks close enough. Scrolling further through the county's portal, he grew cautious. HOA covenants didn't appear anywhere on his title chain. No board votes had jurisdiction here. Yet when he switched tabs to the HOA's own website, the contradiction slapped him across the face. His lake wasn't just listed as an amenity, it was the centerpiece. His dock, captured in a glossy photograph without his knowledge, gleamed under a marketing banner. Coming soon, lake events for families. Below it, kayak races in August, community fishing tournaments in July, weekend swimming programs for residents in good standing. His private retreat wasn't just being advertised, it was being monetized. Every click revealed more. Price tags disguised as membership fees, schedules detailing public use, even a FAQ section that claimed lake use is included in HOA dues at no extra charge. Aaron sat stunned, staring at his lake turned into a brochure, his private shoreline rebranded as a neighborhood attraction. Na leaned close and whispered the ache in both their minds. "That's our lake," in their marketing. The illusion of control shifted by degrees into brute force the following Saturday. The morning began with hammer strikes echoing through his bedroom. Heavy, rhythmic, metallic. Pulling on jeans, he rushed outside, phone in hand, dread already alive in his stomach. What he saw hit him like a bad dream. His shoreline swarming with volunteers in reflective vests. Some hammered solar stakes into soft soil. Others strung fluorescent banners between his trees, and one group wrestled an oversized sound system down his dock. A bright sign fluttered overhead, strung between two pines. Beautification and Safety Day. Pleasant Valley HOA. It was the gall that stunned him most. These weren't shady contractors sneaking under cover of darkness. They were cheerful neighbors in broad daylight, whistling as they hammered, resting drinks on his rails and acting as if his land had always belonged to them. "Morning," one waved. Hammer paused mid-swing. Almost done with the safety perimeter lights. Aaron steadied the phone camera, keeping his voice level. "Safety perimeter for what?" The volunteer blinked, confused by the question. "For the people." Moline said lake access opens next month. "We're making sure the shoreline meets code." Code. That empty, overused word again. A shield for trespass, a spell for authority. He swung the phone toward the horizon where Moline Pierce herself commanded volunteers like a foreman. Clipboard clutched and pen scribbling. Unauthorized, uninvited, unrepentant. She moved through the crowd not as a guest, but as a master of ceremonies setting the stage for an event. Aaron filmed everything, muttering timestamps under his breath as if narrating future evidence. Each solar light nailed into his buffer zone, each county grant sticker plastered on packaging, each foldable chair hammered into soil that didn't belong to them. Proof. Layer upon layer of proof. "Everything about this is wrong," he whispered into the lens. But instead of stopping, the volunteers looked like deer caught in headlights, uncomfortable, but continuing because no one dared contradict the clipboard. The deputy sheriff's eventual arrival further soured the air. Aaron had seen the patrol car cresting his driveway and felt relief for half a heartbeat, until the officer's voice carried the same tone as last time, weary, bureaucratic, and indifferent. "Mr. Blake, I received a complaint about harassment," the man said, reading from notes. Aaron's eyebrows rose. "Harassment?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "She's building Disneyland on my shoreline." The deputy shuffled through papers, then finally asked flatly, "Do you have your deed?" Wordlessly, Aaron handed the folded record, the inked seal marking it as irrefutable. The deputy scanned it, sighed, then raised his voice toward the shoreline where Malene stood expectant. "Ms. Pierce, you filed a false report. This man owns this property, every inch of it." The moment should have ended things, but it didn't. Malene clutched her clipboard tighter, eyes flashing not with defeat but resolve. "The HOA has usage rights," she snapped. "Previous owner agreements, community easements. This is civil, officer. He'll have to take it up in court." With that, the deputy handed back Aaron's deed, muttering something about civil channels, as though law ended where the HOA began. Neighbors, sensing tension, began to drift away, folding chairs half-packed, banners sagging. But the damage remained. Hundreds of dollars of unauthorized installations glared across his shoreline. 57 chairs lined the dock like soldiers waiting for commands. That night, Aaron and Na lay sleepless in their bedroom as solar lights pulsed across the water, their artificial glow mocking the peace they'd come for, every bulb a trespass, every banner a stolen claim. The thought hardened into vow, no more silence. If this was going to be a game of permits and paperwork, so be it. But now the evidence was stacked. Deeds, photos, recordings, and cold LED glare washing across his curtains. Aaron stared at the ceiling, hearing the humming lights outside, and whispered to himself what would become his mantra. "If they want bureaucracy, I'll bury them in it." The next Monday morning, Aaron Blake walked into the county offices with a folder under his arm thicker than a farmer's almanac. Every page inside was a weapon. Photographs of stickers, screenshots of online amenity listings, video recordings of volunteers hammering lights into his shoreline. Each sheet was proof, but proof alone wasn't enough. It needed the right eyes. The county clerks looked up as he entered, their Monday morning routine disrupted by a man who had clearly arrived armed with facts and fury. He didn't have to explain long. The official at the desk raised both brows when Aaron slid across a printed screenshot of the HOA website, his lake featured in pristine glory under the heading, Pleasant Valley Community Amenity. Below it, projected annual fees, scheduled events, and a projected revenue model that smelled more like Wall Street than suburban harmony. "This is your parcel?" the clerk asked calmly, though her frown was betraying her alarm. "Yes," Aaron said flatly, pulling his deed from the folder like a knight drawing his sword. "Mine, no easements, no covenants, no contracts. The site is fraud from top to bottom." The words fraud and amenity hung heavy as the clerk scribbled notes and summoned her supervisor. Within the hour, Aaron sat at a conference table, flanked by officials who looked equally intrigued and disturbed. Each new document he produced layered the crime higher. The grant application stamped approved, claiming beautification funding for an HOA lake. His lake, line items totaling $18,000. Lighting, landscaping, seasonal improvements. His evidence folder was damning, but the county's own response was the killing stroke. By Tuesday, a public records packet landed in his mailbox with a cover sheet stamped "Request Fulfilled." Aaron ripped it open at the kitchen counter, Na leaning close as he read aloud each page. There it was in black and white. Applicant, Pleasant Valley HOA. Project, Community Lake Beautification and Safety. Claiming amenities none of them legally owned. Promising access none of them had the right to sell. The packet included a sworn declaration signed in looping strokes by none other than Malene Pierce, HOA president. A signature beneath the words, "All information contained is accurate under penalty of perjury." Na's fingers tightened into his arm as if bracing him against the surge of outrage. "She swore to the county that our lake was hers," Aaron whispered, almost in disbelief. "She defrauded them. She defrauded us." The betrayal stretched wider when neighbors started to show receipts. Mrs. Rodriguez approached Aaron after seeing his video posts swirling online. "I thought the fee was normal," she confessed, waving a slip-stamped lake beautification contribution, $500. Aaron stared, the paper trembling in her hand. "You paid?" "Lots of us did," she admitted, ashamed. In the weeks that followed, more residents confronted him privately, clutching records of payments they believed secured seasonal access. Some were relieved to discover the fraud, others defensive, unwilling to accept they'd been duped. But the truth cut through. Excuses. The HOA had collected thousands in fees for a lake they couldn't offer access to. The threads pulled tighter with conversations Aaron had with his friend Tom Bradley at the county assessor's office. Over the phone, Tom's voice carried a mix of concern and incredulity. They tried to reclassify your property, he explained, tapping into historical files. Filed a petition 6 weeks ago to mark it as shared community space. We flagged it as fraudulent and rejected it. Aaron nearly laughed through his frustration. So while Malene was on my dock, telling me the HOA had authority, she'd already been denied by the county for trying to rewrite reality? That's exactly right, Tom confirmed grimly. The petition was still in the file archives. Stamped with a fat red rejected, it all became a spider's web. And Malene sat smugly in the center, tugging threads of grant money, tax adjustments, and community support. She'd erected an entire scheme on the illusion that persistence would outweigh ownership. Meanwhile, Aaron was building webs of his own. Every screenshot, every fraudulent flyer, every testimonial from misled neighbors became a knot in the net designed to catch her. The more he compiled, the more damning the picture became. One evening, as Aaron sat cataloging evidence by lamplight, Na leaned across the table, pointing to his notes. She's not just playing HOA politics, she said softly. She's building a business. $500 a household, 200 households. That's $100,000 a year on property she doesn't own. A scam disguised as community stewardship. Aaron rubbed his temples, the absurdity of it both exhausting and clarifying. And now it's not just her lying to the neighbors. She lied to the county, and that means she lied to the state too. That's fraud on every level. The fraud web was no longer hidden, it was glowing. Much like those gaudy shoreline lights for anyone willing to look. Between the bogus grant applications, the rejected petitions, the fraudulent fee collections, and the doctored insurance claims beginning to surface, Malene's empire wasn't standing on sand, it was standing on forged parchment. And parchments, Aaron knew, could be burned under scrutiny. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. This was theft at the bureaucratic level, fraud at the financial level, and now, thanks to the documents piling in his evidence folder, a matter ready for courts and investigators. As Aaron bagged up one last signed receipt from a duped neighbor, he felt it settle in his bones. The fight wasn't about stickers or committees. It was about exposing a carefully woven fraud, and that web finally was starting to unravel. For weeks, Aaron thought the worst of it lived on paper. Forged petitions, doctored flyers, grant forms inked with someone else's authority. But one spring morning, proof oozed out of the water itself. He had risen early, hoping to reclaim the piece of his dock with coffee in hand when he noticed the color. The lake wasn't its usual clear blue glass. It was glowing. At first it looked like sunlight playing tricks. But no, the water shimmered with an unnatural fluorescence, an eerie green ribbon weaving out from the southern cove like poison ink in clear water. The mug slipped from his hand, coffee scattering across the dock. His chest tightened as dread flooded in. This was no optical illusion. It was contamination. He sprinted closer, heart hammering, the sour chemical smell hitting him before his shoes even reached the edge. Behind him, Na came running, half asleep, clutching her robe. She stopped dead when she saw it. "Is that safe?" she whispered, fear hanging heavy in her voice. Aaron didn't answer. He already knew the answer. He called 911 with shaking hands, but before dispatch could even respond, voices carried from across the shoreline. 3 contractors stood by the storm drain, fluorescent drums at their boots. Bold black letters on the side read, "Industrial fluorescent dye, non-potable." One man casually held his phone, muttering into it, "Flow research, beautification drainage project." Aaron pulled his own phone out instantly, recording the scene as the sickly glow spread across his private lake. Neighbors started appearing, some pulling out their own cameras, murmuring in shock as the water's surface resembled a radioactive spill. Sarah Walsh, the county environmental officer, arrived faster than Aaron expected. She cursed the moment she laid eyes on the water, ripping open an evidence kit. "Who approved this?" she demanded. The lead contractor shifted nervously. "The HOA. Ms. Pierce approved it. We were told this was a hydrology assessment." He held up his phone to prove it, filled with text messages from Malene herself. Aaron leaned in, jaw clenched as Sarah scrolled. The texts were clear. "Use industrial-grade dye, cheaper. No one will notice. HOA has blanket approval." Another message, even worse. "Skip permit process. Grant budget doesn't cover delays." Sarah's face went red-hot with fury. "The HOA has no legal authority here," she snapped, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "You just discharged chemicals into a private protected body of water. She snapped photos of every text message, every drum, every inch of glowing shoreline. From the corner of his eye, Aaron saw fish twitching at the surface. By the time he bent down with Sarah's nets, 3 bluegill and a large bass had rolled belly up. Na gasped and grabbed his arm. "Our drinking water," she whispered, almost choking. "The well pulls from the aquifer. What if it's tainted?" Sarah worked like a surgeon under siege, labeling jars, bagging dead fish, photographing everything. "This dye isn't immediately poisonous," she explained, "but it strips oxygen. It creates dead zones. In a closed system like your lake, that's enough to kill aquatic life. Combined with algae and summer heat, it could collapse the ecosystem." She sealed the evidence with brisk efficiency. "This is unpermitted industrial discharge into a drinking water classified system. Mr. Blake, the EPA is going to want this." Aaron felt the weight in those words. EPA. Federal oversight. This was no longer petty fraud or a tantrum with stickers. This was a felony-level environmental violation. His mind raced with the other documents still spread across his desk at home. The fraudulent grant, the reclassification attempts, the forged signatures. Together they painted a portrait of Malene not as a bungling zealot, but as a dangerous schemer, willing to poison land and water for the illusion of authority. As cameras rolled, reporters drawn in by the social media stir of Aaron's livestream, Sarah read aloud the contractor's texts. Her finger jabbed at the words cheaper and ignore permits. The whole town would hear it now crystal clear, broadcast in neon glow. The contractor, shamefaced, admitted he'd only followed orders because the HOA president said it was authorized. It wasn't just negligence. It was deliberate deception, cost-cutting fraud written into text messages. That afternoon, Aaron got the call he never imagined when buying his so-called sanctuary. The county director of environmental services, his voice taut with urgency. "Mr. Blake, our field officer confirmed unpermitted chemical discharge. We're elevating this as a federal matter. The EPA has been notified." The words made Aaron's stomach twist. Federal meant serious fines, long investigations, even the dreaded possibility of Superfund-level remediation if contamination lingered. Remediation costs could bankrupt entire corporations, and now an HOA with $500 beautification fees thought they could handle that? Malene had overreached, and Aaron hoped for once that federal weight would crush her web. That night, the neon hue clung to the shoreline like a curse. Aaron and Na sat silent on their deck under synthetic starlight, the hum of unauthorized solar lamps now joined by the faint chemical shimmer in the water. The serenity they had worked so hard for was gone. In its place, steel evidence of what happens when fraud crosses into recklessness. The fraud had grown claws. It wasn't just fake signatures anymore. It was suffocated fish. It was poisoned water. It was federal crime territory. Aaron closed his laptop softly that night, after sending water test reports and screenshots to his attorney. He whispered aloud as if to remind himself, "Every lie leaves residue, and now hers glows neon green." 3 weeks after the lake glowed neon green, Aaron Blake found himself walking into the county administration building with the weight of 3 months' chaos stuffed into one thick legal binder. He wasn't alone this time. Na walked beside him, calm and steady in a way only she could be, her presence reminding him what all of this was for. Their sanctuary. Behind them trailed his lawyer, armed with the crisp precision of legal teeth. Sarah Walsh from Environmental Services carrying evidence kits. Tom Bradley from the assessor's office, his folders bristling with maps. And Harris, the insurance investigator, with a laptop full of denied claims and fraudulent filings. Even Deputy Morrison showed up, carrying the false harassment complaint Malene had submitted weeks earlier. The hallway outside the hearing room buzzed with reporters. This wasn't neighborhood gossip anymore. This was legal reckoning. Inside, the conference room was strangely still, like the quiet before a storm. At 2:00 sharp, Malene entered, gripping a manila folder in one hand and trailed by an attorney whose face had the pale, wide-eyed look of someone realizing just how toxic his client's mess had become. She sat stiffly at the respondent's table, clipboard finally absent but her aura of authority still straining for control. Aaron felt a surge of defiance. For the first time, this wasn't her terrain. The room belonged to the law. The proceedings were merciless in their structure. Tom led with property records, a 40-year clear line of deeds. all showing the lake and its buffer zone marked as private. "There's never been an HOA covenant attached to this water body," he said flatly, sliding copies toward the board. Malene shifted uncomfortably, her attorney jotting frantic notes. Then Sarah stepped forward, clicking through a slideshow of photos projected large against the wall. Slide 1, fluorescent dye swirling in green ribbons across the lake's surface. Slide 2, dead fish bagged and labeled as evidence. Slide 3, screenshots of her texts instructing contractors to use industrial grade, cheaper, and to skip permits. Sarah's voice cut like a blade. "This isn't beautification. This is unpermitted chemical discharge into a drinking water system. It's not just violation, it's environmental crime." Harris followed, outlining the insurance angle. On the screen appeared documents the HOA had filed claiming community lake property, seeking reimbursement for damages on an asset they never owned. He scrolled to forged covenants dated 1987, before the HOA even existed, fonts and paper stock betraying their modern creation. A textbook forgery, Harris confirmed, and an attempted fraud against insurance carriers. He closed his laptop sharply. "These are felonies." The room shifted fully when Aaron's attorney slid one final paper across the table. A simple legal agreement titled No Rights Statement. It contained 2 sentences. The HOA acknowledges no ownership or management rights over the private lake parcel of Aaron Blake. All unauthorized installations are to be removed within 48 hours. His lawyer's voice was calm but final. "Here is the only way this ends without litigation and criminal court. Sign and walk out. Refuse, and every department in this room proceeds to file charges." Malene's facade cracked then. Her voice shook as she protested. These were community assets. Residents depended on them. People expected amenities, but Tom cut her off. "You promised amenities you never owned." When her attorney leaned toward her, whispering sharply, Aaron saw her shoulders sag. She was cornered. The room was stacked with every piece of truth she had tried to bury under paperwork. Slowly, almost trembling, she picked up the pen and scrawled her name. The signature looked less like authority and more like surrender. Once it hit the paper, a wave seemed to pass through the room. Sarah photographed it for environmental files. Tom logged it for property records. Harris forwarded it to insurance agencies. Aaron's lawyer sealed it in his briefcase. With that signature, the entire fantasy collapsed. The false stickers, the banners, the chairs, the neon dyes, the forged covenants, every flimsy claim evaporated. All that remained was the truth that had been true the whole time. The lake wasn't the HOA's to manage, to market, or to poison. It was his. The board's ruling followed swiftly and brutally. Malene was personally fined $27,000 in environmental and civil penalties. She was permanently banned from holding any HOA leadership role in the county, ordered to reimburse collected fees, ordered to remove every unauthorized installation within 48 hours. Her resigned board members distanced themselves fast, scrambling for attorneys of their own. By the end of the week, the HOA looked less like an institution and more like a lineup of defendants. That night, Aaron sat on his deck, exhausted but unshaken, watching contractors remove the last of the solar lamps. As one was uprooted, shadows rushed back over the grass, reclaiming the night. The hum of artificial light that had mocked them for so long dissolved into crickets and the gentle ripple of real water under real moonlight. Na brought him a coffee, this time sweet, not bitter. She squeezed his hand. "Is it really over?" He sipped, savoring the natural quiet. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, it might take time. But the truth was undeniable. They had won." In the weeks that followed, county officials issued correction letters to neighbors, apologizing for fraudulent fees. The EPA closed investigations with enforcement orders, pinning responsibility squarely on Malene and the HOA board. Aaron introduced his own modest system, offering optional lake passes under strict rules, fees funneled to conservation funds, not HOA pockets. Unlike the gaudy fraud, his arrangement was transparent, legal, modest. Residents smiled, thanked him, and signed waivers with gratitude. Trust slowly was returning. One evening, Aaron spotted Malene herself walking the shore, shoulders slumped, clutching a printed permit like every other neighbor now had to do. She didn't wave, didn't speak, just passed silently. That was fine. The permit was speech enough. Once she'd walked with clipboards, barking orders. Now she walked by permission slip, quieter than the lake itself. That reversal was victory enough. As the last ripples of neon faded from memory, Aaron looked over his water and finally let the relief breathe through him. Property rights, he realized, are fragile only when unguarded, but once defended with persistence, proof, and patience, they stand like stone. The HOA hadn't stolen his lake. All they'd managed to do was teach him, and everyone else watching, that truth holds longer than fraud, and that even the boldest lies eventually collapse under the weight of reality. The lake was his. Always had been, always would be.